In August of 2017, the Food Security Committee, along with the agriculture sector staff and the Gender and Development coordinators at Peace Corps Tanzania, facilitated a 6-day training for 15 volunteers and their counterparts. The volunteers were from all Peace Corps Tanzania sectors: agriculture, health, and education, and the training focused on gender and agribusiness, with technical information covering beekeeping and chicken raising. Peace Corps Tanzania teaches to its frameworks and tailors its in-service trainings, ISTs, to increase the knowledge and capabilities of volunteers and their counterparts in targeted technical areas. This training addressed aspects of 2 of the 3 main objectives within the agriculture framework. Objective 1, to increase farmers' capacity to improve diversity, productivity, and/or sustainability of smallholder farmer agricultural production, with a focus on one part of this objective, small animal husbandry, chickens and beets. And Objective 2, to increase farmers' capacity to increase agriculture-related income, with a focus on 2 parts of this objective, both basic farm planning management skills and income-generating activity development, IGAs. There were also sessions focused on gender and agriculture or agribusiness, in Tanzania specifically. These sessions helped participants to understand the cultural gender norms and roles that exist in the country, to see how more involvement of women alongside men can lead to much greater success in many, if not all, endeavors, and to see why women specifically, if trained and encouraged, are in an excellent position to participate in small business management.
So the Gender and Agriculture training really came out of this idea from the Let Girls Learn Summit in Madagascar in 2016 that Peace Corps Tanzania needed to find a way to find the intersection between gender equality and the initiatives that we were working on in the agriculture sector, which was really underrepresented in a lot of our gender equality work.
During the training, volunteers and their counterparts spent a great deal of time learning all they would need to know to keep bees and harvest and process their honey, and to raise disease-free chickens on a well-balanced diet. Participants constructed and hung modern top-bar beehives and learned the basics of banda, chicken coop, construction, practicing in miniature with cardboard and paper. Throughout the week, participants also learned about the basics of small business management: record keeping, making budgets, planning for future expenses and investments, etc. Lesson plans on best business practices, created by the training and facilitation team, were also distributed so that training participants could take this information back to their communities and teach others how to run small businesses. The 6-day training culminated in lesson planning and facilitation practices to prepare participants to lead trainings of trainers, TOTs, back in their own communities. TOTs are a great grassroots method of encouraging the ripple effect of information dissemination, and they also empower people within communities to step into greater leadership roles, encouraging collaboration. The training also culminated in the completion of small grants, written by volunteers and their counterparts. In the days leading up to the training, participants did research within their communities using gender and economic-focused PACA tools, participatory analysis for community action. Using this information and the details they learned throughout the training, participants were able to complete and submit for review their small grant applications. These grants would help them to start beekeeping and/or chicken raising agribusiness projects of varying scales in their communities. Most grant applications were reviewed and accepted within weeks of IST completion. This assisted grant writing, paired with the training, allowed 12 of 15 participants to successfully plan grant-based projects, totaling almost $43,500 USD in grant funds and the equivalent of $24,500 USD in community contributions. The projects ranged in scale, requiring assistance between $250 USD and $10,000 USD of grant funding, and directly involving between 5 to about 80 community members per community, adults and youth, in the project implementation.
We created this new application process that required volunteers to use some of the PACA tools that they were equipped with during their PST and expand on that through a financial budget PACA. This really required a lot of buy-in from their communities and the village leadership and government in order to make sure that the projects would be sustainable. After Volunteers and Counterparts returned to their villages, they were able to go through the grant process with their community leaders, secure community contribution, and then begin these projects.
We were truly amazed to see how quickly counterparts and volunteers were able to wrap up and submit their grant applications. And while the grants were being processed, they really lost no time in project implementation, immediately starting to train other community members upon their return. Some volunteer and counterpart pairs were extremely ambitious with their projects, involving almost 80 women in project implementation. Others decided to start small with 5 or 10 community members involved, but Peace Corps really gave them the freedom to choose their own project design, which allowed them to find the most sustainable way to implement their projects in their own communities. Following the in-service training and the approval of grant applications, volunteers and their counterparts immediately started work within their communities. Some of these projects are still at various stages of implementation. Others have been completed successfully with outstanding results. Andrew and his counterpart Christina formed 2 community groups, one for chickens and one for bees, following the in-service training. A total of 21 women in the chicken group learned skills relating to chicken coop construction, health and nutrition, diseases, and agribusiness. After constructing their chicken coops, each woman received 9 chickens to practice the newly learned small animal husbandry skills. Through selling eggs, the women have increased their income on average by 14%. This increased income means money to pay for school fees, purchase food for families, a more secure household, and the expansion of their new businesses. The bee group of 35 members gained the skills and knowledge in bee biology, hive placement, honey and beeswax harvesting, beehive construction, and agribusiness skills. After learning these skills, 8 new hives were built to form 2 apiaries. Honey harvesting and the processing and marketing of bee products led to an average 25% increase of group member income. Using the facilitation techniques and lesson plans acquired and created at the in-service training, Katie and her counterpart Raphael facilitated 3 day-long seminars covering the basics of keeping chickens, budgeting, and maintaining a sustainable business. They were able to involve 37 community members in total. Following the first seminar, the group built an example chicken coop using the guidelines they learned during these seminars. Then, over the next month, each group member built an improved chicken coop at his or her home, and 750 chicks were distributed to help the community members begin their small-scale agribusinesses. Katie and Raphael divided their 37 project members into 5 smaller groups, each with a chairperson responsible for following up with all the group members. The members relied on each other for advice, troubleshooting, and to coordinate vaccinations. They have now started their businesses to sell both eggs and chickens. In all, about half of them women will soon have a significant supplemental income to support their families. Brian and his counterpart Evelyn formed a small women's group upon their return from the training. They then started to meet weekly for trainings and seminars that covered the information on both bees and chickens and the basics of business management learned at the in-service training. They worked with a village carpenter to construct an example beehive and chicken isolation coop, and then started work with a local beekeeping expert to practice honey harvesting and processing. Brian and his women's group are proceeding at an excellent rate, learning together how to find success when keeping bees and raising chickens. With the support of the local carpenter, 10 Kenyan top bar hives were built. After baiting the hives with beeswax, propolis, and flowers, the women placed them near a stream with plenty of trees and flowers. Thus far, bees have made homes in 3 of the hives, and the women are planning to rebait the other hives soon. The women have also made beeswax 4 times from honeycomb that they have collected. Not only did they use the honeycomb in the baiting of their hives, they also are making a pain and inflammation reducing rub with local plants and oils from town. The women are still tinkering with the recipe, but have been able to sell enough of this value-added product to cover the cost of the oil used. 2 full-sized chicken coops have also been built thus far, along with many smaller isolation coops, with the assistance of the local carpenter. The women who receive the full-size coops will repay the costs with half of the income they obtain from chicken keeping activities, until the loan is repaid in full. Once enough money is repaid, another chicken coop will be built for another woman, and so on. Alex's counterpart, Edgar, started work the very day they returned to the village. He totally remade his extensive courtyard area into improved chicken coops, 3 different styles to accommodate the different ages of the chicks and chickens as they would be raised. Alex and Edgar then selected 1 woman from each sub-village in their community to come visit these coops and receive training on keeping chickens, a training of trainers. These new experts then returned to their sub-villages with the task to construct their own chicken coops for chicken raising and training purposes. Laurel and her counterpart Sarah worked with their community's people living with HIV group, the Faraha group, to complete their chicken project. Over the course of a couple of months, as grant funding was being processed, the women attended trainings on the construction of semi-intensive coops, how to vaccinate and identify signs of illness in their chickens, raising chicks in brooders, how to make healthy chicken feed, and agribusiness techniques. Once the funds were received, 26 individualized chicken coops were constructed. 234 local hens and 26 roosters were distributed among the 26 women of the group. And since their final training, the women have so far taught an additional 78 community members the new small animal husbandry practices they learned through the project, truly exhibiting the power of TOTs.
So before starting the project, it was my counterpart, who's a local nurse at the dispensary, who approached me and asked if there was any kind of income generating project that we could do for the women's group at the dispensary. And right around that same time, I had received an email about an in-service training on gender and agriculture, specifically raising chicken and bees in a rural community setting. And so I told her about that training. She was very excited. Peace Corps volunteer and community counterpart collaboration was really important in the success of my project, specifically because my counterpart had the language skills that I did not have to properly elaborate on some of these lesson plans that we were teaching. My counterpart was also helpful in negotiating prices for materials that we needed to buy for the chicken coops, as well as figure out transportation costs between our banking town and our community. And this project also empowered women to become leaders in the community by being chicken experts or small animal husbandry experts on raising chickens.
This training was really unique in how extensive it was. It focused on 2 technical areas, bees and chickens, which was the real meat of the training, but it also tied agribusiness into these technical topics. And on top of all that was the gender component, really trying to involve women in business development. Traditionally in Tanzania, women do a lot of the farming, but it's mostly the day-to-day labor of farming corn or beans. So through this training, we wanted to see female community members involved with volunteers and their counterparts to not only learn, but actually start and successfully continue their own agribusinesses with their technical knowledge in beekeeping and or chicken raising. Peace Corps Tanzania in-service trainings, ISTs, allow volunteers and counterparts to take valuable technical skills and knowledge back to their communities. These intensive trainings prepare participants for the different stages of project planning and implementation, assist in community analysis, and provide techniques and tools to share their new knowledge with other community leaders and community members. These ISTs are springboards to successful activities and projects and allow participants to take off immediately following a training, organizing community members in groups, working through every step of project planning, strategizing the implementation, and then finding success together, the greatest reward after so much hard work and dedication. Volunteers and Counterparts work together to take the tools they've acquired and apply them to their own unique community situations. This individualized approach to, and small scale of, these projects allow for the greatest level of sustainable development to be reached. It is truly beautiful to see the Peace Corps approach find such wonderful success in the lives of those who work with our volunteers and their counterparts.